Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Jennifer Bopp and I'm the moderator today. Welcome to Maryland Online's webinar series. We are presenting today, 5 years later, where are we now? And we have a special guest as our presenter today, Teresa Valais. She is the Senior Instructional Designer at Towson University, working to support faculty professional development and other faculty academic center of excellence at Towson, also known as FACET initiatives. So we will go ahead and get started. Please feel free to post questions in the chat as we go along today. You're also able to raise your hand and ask a question by unmuting your microphone. Just a note at the end, we will be sharing the presentation at the end in the chat. So I will turn it over to Teresa now. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Valais. It's a real pleasure to be here today. And actually, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me, first of all? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, very good. It's a real pleasure to be here and to share my ideas in this presentation. Just wanted to ask all of you to please feel free to chime in either through the chat. Jennifer, is it Bopp? Jennifer?
Yes,
Okay,
that is
Jennifer
correct.
Bopp
Yes.
is the moderator, and she'll be helping me with any comments in the chat. But I really want you to know that this is a presentation for you, for the audience, not for me, because I think what I'm about to talk about are some of the thoughts and ideas that we have in the work that we do every day. So about a year ago, I was thinking to myself, what if we are swiftly brought online again? Where are we 5 years later after COVID? Well, working at Towson University, I was not working here at the time last year when I had that. In other words, I was working at Towson, but during COVID, I was working with another institution. I know many people who are in the audience were also working during COVID. Just a brief account of the folks attending this presentation. How many people were working in faculty support during COVID? Put that in the chat, please. Okay. Only 2 folks were working in faculty support in the audience during COVID. Oh, wow. That's something. Faculty member and chair during COVID. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So I've got a good audience for this.
Yes, we get a lot of thumbs up too. A lot of
Yeah.
thumbs up. Yes.
Okay. So the next picture should probably resonate with most folks. So we're going back to March 2020. And this storehouse fire pretty much can sum up what we were all thinking. Oh, I'm fine. Everything's just fine. We can handle this. But the reality is that COVID exposed a lot of inadequacies, also a lot of inequities, and certainly was the driver, in my humble opinion, and from what I've understand, for the DOJ Title II accessibility mandate. So my background is language teaching. I started in the classroom. It's probably spent about 10 to 12 years teaching online. One of the things we do in language teaching is we use a technique called collocation. So we take words and we put them together with small other little words to have new meanings. So we're about to do this. We're going to do this with emergency in just a second. But what I want you to do before then is I will demonstrate as any good teacher. So if I put in the center or talk about the word make, we can provide other collocations. Make up, make across, and do different types of words. So when you think of the word emergency, what comes to mind? Put that in the chat, please. What other little word connect to emergency that you can think of come to mind? Emergency, urgent, panic, agency. How about emergency services? Emergency plan. Okay, we're getting there. Anything else? So let's take a look at various collocations for emergency. Emergency exit, emergency kit, emergency plan, emergency, perfect, evacuation, emergency landing, emergency shelter, emergency call, emergency assistance, and the like. One of the things that relates to my conversation today with you is emergency remote teaching, and how I'm hoping that one lesson learned from COVID is that we never have to go that route again. So I have a few presentation aims. We're going to talk about preparedness for disruption compared to 5 years ago and where your organization is today. We're going to talk about inclusive design and resilient frameworks for teaching and learning through times of crisis, for a way to move past that notion of remote teaching to a more reactive approach to disruption, to more proactive, resilient course design by considering pedagogicals considerations, and as a way to ensure that your university is prepared for instructional continuity during emergency. Getting back to where I started, I realized at Towson we did not have a plan post-COVID. I was not here pre-COVID, so post-COVID, I was down one instructional designer and it was just me. And you can really imagine the thoughts going in my head to the fact that I am one instructional designer with 1,600 faculty at that time. And what if? So those are questions I was asking myself. So right now, I would like to do a little poll of the audience. You can simply use the QR code on the screen, or I believe Jennifer is going to actually place the URL in the chat as well. Compared to March 2020, how well prepared is your organization to shift classes online mid-semester, given a closure tomorrow? Give you a minute or so to answer that. So far, I have one response. Does the link open?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, a level 3, which means that your organization is prepared. That's terrific news. Level 2 is that we're somewhat prepared, and the audience of 13, 2 responded that they were not well prepared. So when we take a look at our figures, if you will allow me to do this, it's about half and half, right? Half are well prepared and the other are either not prepared or somewhat prepared. So I've got the right audience for my presentation today. Okay. All right. So what I mentioned before was that COVID, the rearview mirror of COVID reflected the need to actually have more resilience in course design to be able to withstand the pressure of unpredictable disruption and instructional continuity. So what that truly meant is that there is a paradigm shift involved. So the idea then is to design once for all, having these conversations with faculty as they prepare themselves for the semester. The one thing we should have learned from COVID is to design your course with as much flexibility, built-in flexibility and resilience as possible so that you and your students are prepared to shift forward. And how we're going to talk about that today is through something called resilient pedagogy and another term we are very much aware of, which is inclusive design. Interestingly enough, that inclusive design fits hand in glove right now with what the work many of us are doing in answering the mandate for accessible course content. So back in 2020, there was a big group that got together that was saying, what is our pain? Why are we feeling this pain? And one of the leaders of this was Rebecca Quintana. And she came out with a collective group of folks who really put their finger on it, which in particular went towards how do you develop dynamic learning so that your interactions and your content can shift in the event that you need to shift, and that is not a difficult shift for either you or for your students. And that's really the key. By the way, I'm going to stop 2 seconds right here and let you know that I have developed a Padlet, which really gets into a lot of really great information about resilient teaching. And I am sharing all of this with you. So a lot of the information I am discussing today, you will have access to post of presentation. Do we have any questions before I go forward? No. Okay. All right. So this resilient pedagogy that was worked on in the early years of COVID really talked about a three-principled framework for how you go about working to make sure that your courses and your course content is flexible. So one of these is designing for extensibility. Sounds like a lot of word jargon, but what it means is design the mean viable product. Design that course so that you can do light lifts or light pivots, but that it is basically developed with a great user experience from the start. And it leaves room to stretch for novel capabilities as well as context. Number two part of this resilient pedagogy is designing for flexibility. So that is designing with accessibility in mind, that considers what we know with UDL learner variability. And then the third, designing for redundancy. Include diversified course methods and materials and assessments. And I'm going to stop right here for number three. Having worked initially online in teaching, but worked a number of years, in the classroom, a number of years online. One of the questions I want to ask is, given the digital age that we are teaching in, it should be part of the conversation with faculty that they build in, even into an in-person class, opportunities for students to use the technology so that in the event that you do have to shift, they are very good to go. For example, some of you may be familiar with very UDL-centered discussion practices using VoiceThread, right? Give students opportunity to use audio, video, text in their response. Well, if you're using interactions in the classroom, why not just put one VoiceThread discussion up in your course? Just start with one, because it's very much more difficult to get students to adjust to new technology midstream in learning than it is when that is part of the syllabus from the front end. Okay, I don't believe this is new for all audiences, but it's certainly related to what we're talking about today, designing for all. With the goal of learner agency to reduce and remove barriers to learning for all students as much as possible, and just always proactively considering the learner variability in the design of the course. Okay, so again, one of the things, again, I don't believe this is new for the guidelines, the UDL guidelines is new for the audience, but what I am pointing out on this slide is that this is the latest version. And what's interesting, most important for all, was the term, the way that this was updated from provide for, which certainly sounds like an accommodation model to me, to design for. That's what the new version actually highlights and concentrates on, so that creating inclusive learning environments for all is something that is considered on the forefront, not as an afterthought. And one piece I would like to share with you was when I'm working with faculty, it's very clear that we're speaking the same language. Oftentimes early on, when I started speaking with faculty about a year ago about the moving forward with accessibility, what we needed to do was to really make clear to faculty, what does accessibility mean? And perhaps maybe what it doesn't mean. So oftentimes faculty can come into this under the understanding that it's accommodation. So what's important is that when we're talking about accessibility and course design, we're thinking of proactive. It's a proactive. It's born accessible. Also, it benefits everyone, not just some, and that it's built in to the digital environment from the start, from the way that you lay out the navigation, the course navigation, to the way that your PowerPoints are accessible. And what's important here is that faculty understand what we're talking about with inclusive design and resilient pedagogy is the proactive stance. Okay. So let's talk about a few strategies here then. So to be prepared to pivot to another teaching modality mid-semester, what's helpful is if faculty provide a clear structure. They provide that in their syllabi. They provide that in the way they set the course up, uh, ways that they would consider critical elements of their course are all parts of this. Incorporate flexibility. Plan for alternative ways for students to access and perceive information. Map out their course activities and ways that these activities can be done either in class or online. Set up online discussions. That was something I talked about before. You can either do that in every LMS has their own discussion board. You can do it using the external tools or integrated tools into your LMS like VoiceThread, or even in your LMS. So just having that a part of your course design from the start is extremely helpful. And then of course, be flexible with deadlines where possible. Make strategic choices. All right. Be thinking about how you're going to design interaction should there be a modality shift. Oh, yeah. And by the way, this is, again, secondhand nature for all of us here. But what do you mean when you're talking about interaction? Is that the same thing as engagement? And how do students, I'm often having to point out the interaction elements here in my discussions with faculty. And I should take a step back for 2 seconds here and say, one of my responsibilities at Towson is to administer the online teaching eligibility process, which often involves a course review. And in doing that, I have these conversations with faculty. And again, just the spotlight here on plan out your lectures into bite size, 5 to 15 minutes maximum. Consider low stakes assignments rather than high stake, longer, more formal assignments. And here's some of the strategies that faculty can use. You will get this presentation. Also, one other thing is that I've developed, no, this doesn't link. All of these documents are in the Padlet that I'm handing out with you. So one of the things I want to share with you is that when we're thinking of inclusive design, makes learning environments usable and accessible. When we're talking about resilient pedagogy, it makes courses sustainable across disruption. And I think most folks in the audience will agree that we are coupling both of them in our work today. Any questions from anyone before I go forward? Or ideas or thoughts? No? Okay. So I was thinking about how could I illustrate uh, the benefits of fusing or combining inclusive design with resilient pedagogy. So I went to Napkin AI like a lot of people, and I said, take my idea and make an illustration out of it. So there was a few areas that I wanted to focus on are shared practices, Flexible deadlines, transparent communication. How are we doing that from the start? From the start of the term, so that midstream you do not have to inform students how they're going to communicate with you during disruption or during an emergency. And an emergency can be a temporary situation as well. It could be that the faculty member is ill. It could be not necessarily a pandemic. It could also be a natural weather event, as we know. So what are the shared goals? The shared goals between inclusive design and resilient pedagogy is that they focus on the student. They are student-centered. Encourages multiple pathways and flexibility, diverse learning methods and formats, emphasizes student-centered choices and design. And again, it's the proactive. You walk away with one word as we leave the presentation today, you're going to have in your pocket proactive. Okay, so instructional continuity during disruption requires a strategic, proactive course design that is accessible, flexible, and student-centered, so that all learners can persist and thrive, and no matter who they are or what happens, they can be successful. So, what I would like to do at this point is to open up the floor for discussion. One of my favorite quotes is this T.S. Eliot quote: "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." When you think about 2025, 2026 academic year, how does your current instructional continuity plan, policy, guide, whatever your language is, during emergencies include strategic, proactive course design? I'm going to open the floor right here, and I'm going to ask folks to share. There were 6 responses where folks in the audience said that they were able to take lessons learned from COVID and develop their own instructional continuity. Would anyone in the audience like to speak about in what ways they are including proactive, strategic course design in their plan? Oh, yep, absolutely. Suzanne, please open your mic and come on into the conversation.
Hello.
Hey, Suzanne, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Great, nice to meet you. Where are you from?
Nice to meet you. I'm from Chesapeake College. I am in workforce development.
Wonderful, wonderful. I thought what you added was really important. Design courses are even face-to-face in the LMS. Tell me about that.
So every course that I have to bring into my program, I'm usually designing, unless I bring in external teachers, which happens as well. And even if I do bring in an external teacher, I'm asking for all that curriculum to go into Canvas, our LMS program. I'm thinking, I started doing this because I'm thinking, well, what if the teacher needs to call out sick? Would I be able to sit in for them? And so I started doing that from the beginning. And
Mm.
so now all the courses that I'm offering are in Canvas.
You know, Suzanne, I love that. And it resonates with something. I've been 25 years in higher ed, and my first year teaching at UMBC was the year 2000 after finishing my master's in education. It was required of me in the year 2000, 25 years ago, that I minimally, for my face-to-face course, upload my syllabus so all students have access to it. Minimally have all my grades submitted into Blackboard, and that I have a week's worth of lesson plans posted to my course in the event that I got sick and someone else needed to take over my course. So,
Right.
exactly.
So contingency planning, I don't know. I used to be a high school educator. We had to have our lesson plans out and ready the night before at least, or we would be doing weekly plans. So if if something happened, a substitute can come in and take over and know what we planned and kind of just sit in because you just never know.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that we walk on, and of course, we're adults and we are professionals in the room, is that there's a difference between the academic freedom that faculty have in the university setting. And so I think in the conversations that we have with faculty is this idea of teaching competency for 2025 in a digital workplace, that while you have the purview to teach your content as an expert in the way that you best know how, there are technology tools and there are sound um, way
Practices.
practices that are important to incorporate. Absolutely, Suzanne. Hmm.
Yeah, and we want it to go both ways.
Hmm.
So if we had to suddenly go into an online environment, or if you're running an online class, you could now come face to face, say if there's a cyber issue. I see it going back and forth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else? Go ahead, jump in.
Implemented. This is Stephanie McCaslin at College of Southern Maryland.
Hey, Stephanie, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you for that presentation. Loved that.
Very
We
welcome.
have implemented some pretty robust training, both on the student side and on the faculty side, um, to really make sure that the students really understand our LMS and the faculty, but whatever they're teaching, if they're teaching a face-to-face or an online course, really understand all of the ins and outs. And so every single faculty member, whatever they're teaching, if they're an adjunct, if they're a full-time faculty member, they're required to take several components. So they take the training in our LMS, they take ADA training, they take an online presence training, they take a training in, our early alert system, so we make sure that they are getting that really robust professional development. And then our students get that during that orientation process so that everyone knows, before an issue comes up, what is going to happen. And we're very transparent about, hello, if there's a weather issue, if this happens, if that happens, this is our backup plan.
Yeah, I do like that. And it's also accountability, which I
Mm-hmm.
really think is from the top down. And I
Mm-hmm.
and I love that. That's a terrific share. Uh, do you actually have a guide or a plan in writing, instructional continuity?
We do. Yes, we do.
Okay. I'm going to ask Jennifer Bopp if she can put the link to our instructional continuity plan in the chat so I can
Absolutely.
access it too. Thank you.
Sure.
And I'll open that up.
I was going to say, I will chime in here. I'm
Yeah, go.
Tyrone McCoy at the Community College, Baltimore County.
Hey,
Uh,
Tyrone, how are you?
I'm well, I'm well.
Good.
So, as I was thinking about everything, I'm a faculty member. So I'm thinking about when COVID hit, how we adjusted. I think we adjusted pretty quickly, which is kind of a testament to what kind of was already
Mm,
in place in terms of the technology and our ability to use it. However, I'm not sure that even now, if there is a particular, as you were about to share, a continuity plan or a guideline for how to actually do these kind of things. But as I was hearing the other comments, I am, I guess, reflecting on the fact that some of our faculty actually do have lots of content, and they spend a lot of their time making the content. And I think it would be great, as was shared. I can't remember who shared first. I think it might have been, yeah, Suzanne, about presenting enough of that information already in your LMS so that the course can kind of just continue if you have absence or whatever. It doesn't even have to be sick. I mean, oftentimes we're looking for coverage for things that just happen. We've got to go take our kids somewhere or something has happened. We've got appointments and whatever. And on a particular day, we're not going to be here. Like even when we go away for conferences and whatnot, to have someone step in for us to cover our classes for us,
Yes.
there is there's somewhat of a scramble to say, okay, who's going to cover it? And it's not that we don't have the material, because we are a part of, obviously, we do have all of our syllabi and everything already posted online. We do have course shells for all of our courses, online and face to face, that the information is preloaded. So the students get the content, they get all the material that they're going to be using, and including our first day connection with a lot of the publishers, so that they're not paying extra, but they automatically have access to all the homework that is assigned. And so it kind of can flow, obviously, as an I'm missing, you know what the assignment is, take care of that for Tuesday or whatever it is. But in terms of the face-to-face in-class instruction, I guess not everybody has course, as you said, the class plans are for that particular class, how I'm going to teach it and the coverage, and whether it's guided notes or whatever it is. So that's where I think we as faculty just kind of roll with it, because we know the content and we just kind of go with it based on whatever information we know we're supposed to cover for that day. But I guess all that was really to say, I think we're pretty well prepared to shift it, because that's kind of how we all work together and are dynamic in that fashion. But I don't think we have an official guideline or documentation on how we should actually do all that proactively. But so it's piquing my interest to say I got to go look for that and see if that does
Yeah.
exist, if it does exist for us. But
So what was interesting was this had to be vetted by the provost and the vice provost. S- Even though the idea was mine and I put it together, it needed to go up the ladder to be approved. And I love the discussion that we are all having, because I'm hearing that in some environments, there it is instructional continuity, or preparedness is the common thread I'm hearing. Preparedness for what the expectations are for online teaching, preparedness for how do you continue during disruption, are all very, very clear. And I think that that's very important. Yes, thank you for sharing. So I would say, Tyrone, please go and see if you have something like this. Even when we were developing this, um, there there was a very, what's the word I want to say, cautious tiptoe around calling it the instructional continuity preparedness policy. Like I could not call it policy, so I had to take that off the tail end of it. But in some cases, it would be guide, right? And so very, very helpful. And I think that this has already been shared with you, but what's important is, what is your strategy for communication with your students? What is your instructional strategy? These were important points. What's your student engagement strategy? And assessment and feedback strategy. So those were the key areas that I focused on here, and wanted to see something else. Got my Padlet, and here is something else that's really important to the story that I've told today. About 2 years ago, I was called in we have 6 colleges at Towson University, and each one of these colleges have a instructional technology committee, a group. And so they rather run independent. And so one of the groups called me and said, can you please come to our faculty? Our faculty are up in air about having to shift their teaching in the middle of the course to accommodate students' learning. So I thought to myself, they're talking about an accommodation. They're not talking about course design with accessibility in mind, which is what they were really saying, was that I have a student with accommodation and now I need to change my course. That's not what they needed. What they needed to do was, from the front end, build resilience into your course design. And I brought this handout to them. So while they were looking for the quick fix, when I brought this to them, this goes hand in glove with this whole presentation that I'm giving today. And yet it was a challenge that brought me to where we are speaking. Also, your coursework and assign, it's everything that we've just talked about. Provide content in different formats. Everything is listed here. Establish a clear communication plan. So what I was doing, oh, I know it says 3, I must have cut off. Yes, and the faculty support would be the 4th. So all of this is extremely important before you even open the class door on day 1. And you all have this information because I'm sharing it with you. Okay. And did anyone else want to comment before I go forward? No? Okay. So what I would like you to do is not just take the words that I've talked about and maybe some colleagues. What I would love to learn from you are, what are your takeaways? We talked about inclusive design. We did not take a deep dive into inclusive design. We took a deeper dive into resilient pedagogy. We did take a look at how the two are very complementary to each other, and the notion of all of this is a proactive approach to ensuring success for all. Can you please take a look at the exit ticket and put down 1 to 3 takeaways, even if it's just one? I would really love that in the next 2 to 3 minutes. I'm not going to project your commentary. I will just keep that with me. Okay. So I wanted to let you know that we can share the presentation link now in the chat. And also, you'll notice that within this presentation on the final slide is a direct link to the Padlet with the wonderful resources that I've compiled for you. Please take a look at them. I've also included my email address in the chat for all. If you have any questions, if you'd ever like to collaborate, I would embrace that. And I also would like to stop sharing and open the floor for any other questions, ideas, or insights that the audience would like to share. Okay. How long? Oh, Ron, I love that question. Thank you for asking that. Okay. Truth be told, I had already done this at another university, so it wasn't a novel experience for me to develop an instructional continuity. But like I mentioned before, a lot of my instructional continuity plan came from the real challenge that I had with that question coming to a academic unit. And so when I shared that document earlier, which was this one, so much of my instructional continuity was with this resilient teaching tips. So I had already had this document and prepared this. I had already had the experience of developing an instructional continuity plan at another university. And so to answer your question directly, as far as my work was concerned, less than 5 to 6 hours. But what took time was to get the approvals, was, you know, because I had to open it up for other folks to see and have the capability of editing. Any other questions? Yes, Stephanie, it is what takes the time, for sure. It isn't the development of the content for me. It was getting the approval and the okay, and everyone's on the same page. Yes. Yes, that too. That too. And, you know, also, Robin, along with that, getting faculty on board, um, my next endeavor is to actually present a little bit about what I've shared with you today as part of a talking point on the chair and department level with, okay, well, we're thinking about accessibility and we're thinking and taking a look at our courses right now. Let's take a look. What does accessibility mean? What does inclusive design mean? How do you make your courses resilient? I'm not sure whether I can do my what I want to do, but I'm going to certainly put it together. I think it makes sense for my audience here. Did it make sense to you in the way that I pulled it together? Or are there still questions that you have? Yeah.
I think, sorry, I'm not on camera because I'm backlit. You wouldn't be able to see me. But I do think that it's really important that when you find your early adopters, that you kind of embrace them and bring them into your process, and they can help you be champions. I think that one of the things that I'm running into, especially with the Title II issue, is that we're such a small team of faculty professional learning specialists that we can't leverage all of our resources and still meet the need to accommodate everybody as far as getting them up to speed with web content accessibility guidelines. And you know, we've been talking UDL and inclusive learning and accessibility a lot. It is part of our common language, and I appreciate you saying that earlier, you know, that this is kind of our regular vocabulary that we're using when we're talking with each other. It's becoming much more common, but then there's still kind of the, do I have to do the work piece of things that makes it a little challenging. So,
Yeah. And that's where the benefits come in. That's where you have to talk about the student success.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I think that teaching has changed drastically. Uh, there's more commentary on this 5 years later, you know, how and what are we doing? There has been a definite shift in the former practices of just coming in with an outline on a piece of paper and going forward. That is something that I think became very apparent that post COVID, that would leave you very vulnerable if that was your approach, right? So it's really closing the gaps. And maybe that's part of the conversation is, again, along the lines of the benefit is how do you maximize the least either resistance or hardship towards change from the front? How can you do that from the very beginning? You know, for some of my folks here in the audience, I clearly remember some faculty who could not make the change and shift. The real question is 5 years later, can we afford that? Will we experience that? Maybe, yes. But the questions are there safeguards, safe rails we can put up right now to hopefully avoid that as much as possible. And it really does help. That mean viable product is a term that's not the common jargon for teachers, but it can illustrate the point that I'm making. You know, if you want to take that product to the market, design it in a way that it's accessible and usable, and those extra add-ins can be developed later or added later, but have that solid core structure in place that can be easily shifted in person or virtual. And we all know that the problem with remote teaching was that it was misaligned. Courses were developed for in-person delivery and they shifted online. Students were not familiar with technology. Faculty did not know how to learn. Many faculty were not acclimated to the learning management system. And it was a recipe for disaster. I don't think anybody wants that pain point again. No matter what lens you're coming. Instructional designer, chair, one of our attendees was chair at that point, and faculty. Really difficult for all. And I think maybe that's part of that conversation is taking that difficulty and then just realizing it was difficult on multiple levels. And how to minimize that. Especially with accessibility as a big focus right now. Okay. Any other questions? Well, that's all for me for today. I want to thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you came today. Please reach out if you have any questions, if you would like to collaborate, or even just talk through any part of the presentation that I gave today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.